case the Google Meet recording is no good. Cool. All right, so just the three of us today, but welcome to Testing JavaScript with Jest. You guys know me already, and I know you already, so we will skip introductions. Actually, maybe, I also probably should have done introductions before starting, but whatever. Moving forward, let's dive right in. Sound good?
Yep.
Cool. So, disclaimer that I like to add to most presentations, I am not an expert. I do not claim to be an expert. Some things may be wrong, but this is how I do things and it works for me. I have not written any books on the subject, but this is what I use in my professional life and it works well. So I hope that you will have the same experience. But I also provide additional learning resources at the end in case information I provide is wrong or in case you want to learn more. So today will be a busy day. We're going to move a little fast, okay? We will cover why do we even do software testing, the different types of software testing so that when you talk with your coworkers about it, they'll know what the hell you're talking about. Then we'll dive into Jest itself, which is the testing tool we will be covering today. We'll go over setting it up and writing our first test, along with doing mocks, which I'll explain if you are not familiar already. Then we'll work on test setup and teardown to keep things clean, general best practices for writing tests, and then tracking code coverage to make sure that a reasonable portion of your project is well tested. Any questions about the agenda before we get going?
Nope.
Cool. All right. So, why do we test? The most basic answer is because the product needs to work. If you build software, you want it to do what you expect it to do. Testing by hand is error-prone, slow, and boring, and it takes up your time. So it is better to make a computer do it, especially since you would be running the same tests every time you change the software. So why do you want to do a repetitive thing when you can make a computer do a repetitive thing? Other important things are it establishes a level of quality for your code. If your tests are of a high quality, your software must also be of a high quality in order to pass the tests. So this is a good way to make sure that your product improves. It also makes refactoring easier. Refactoring is changing the structure or style of the code while maintaining the functionality. So if your tests are testing the functionality, that's an easy way to see if your refactors are working properly or if you broke something. It also encourages good developer culture. Making engineers test the code themselves makes them care more about the quality of the product. If engineers just write code and then some other QA group tests things, that can actually slow things down if there's no developer testing on their own. Because a developer will just code something, not test it, and then just throw it to QA. QA wastes a whole bunch of time testing something that was never even had a first pass, and then it goes back to the developer, and you just get this nasty cycle of a waste of time. So having the developers write tests prevents things like that from happening. It also establishes a contract of how the system should work. Your tests basically are saying the system should work like this. If the system does not work in the way that the tests describe it, the system is wrong and it needs to be fixed. So your manager, for example, can just look at your tests rather than checking all of your code and be like, yes, this is how we expect the project to work. If the tests pass, I know that the project works this way. And lastly, this is especially true if you're doing back-end engineering. You can actually use your test code as code samples for other developers. So let's say you're a back-end engineer, you're working with a front-end team, and the front-end team is like, oh, how do I query this API? you can just send them a link to a test that queries the API, and you're done. No need to do a whole bunch of different diagrams or write a whole bunch of additional documentation. There's like, here is some code that does this for you already. Please copy and paste it, and you're done. Any questions about why we do testing?
No.
Cool. Moving forward. There are different types of tests. Testing has kind of got a bit of a science to it. So, and in science, we like to categorize things. So tests have been categorized to make talking about them and managing them easier. These are not all the types of testing. There are many more types of testing. But as an engineer, these are the ones you will use most often. Unit tests test a specific body of code, usually a function, to make sure that if you give it some input, you get the expected output. That's it. It doesn't make any calls to any outside systems. It doesn't need any prepared data. It's just give function input, get function output. Is it what you expected? Good, done. Unit tests are meant to be very fast, and they're meant to be just kind of a local test for you to make sure that things aren't being stupid, basically. Integration tests are kind of the next level up, where let's say your system connects to a database. So you test some function, and you allow that function to actually connect to the database, get the data, and then test the output. They're basically the same as unit tests, except in unit tests, you prevent the given function from talking to another system. In an integration test, you test it with the other system. The reason that we make this distinction between the two is that preparing an outside system for a test takes time and effort. Whereas in a unit test, if you can just say, hey, instead of connecting to the outside system, just use this fake data, that's way faster. So that's kind of the key difference between these two. Next up is end-to-end tests, where for a function of the application, for example, logging in, from a client perspective, you do a login, and you expect to either get a login token or permission denied or password incorrect or whatever. That's an end-to-end test. Basically, a feature of the application works. Regression tests are super useful, super useful. If you find a bug, you write a test that tests for the bug. When you have found the bug, the test should fail. When the bug is fixed, the test should pass. This is a regression test. It's basically a bug checker. The reason this is useful is it makes it really easy to prove to someone I fixed the bug because I wrote a test that creates the bug, and the test now passes. And it also prevents the bug from happening again. Okay? So it is very frequent that someone accidentally removes some code or reverts a change, and oh, the bug is back. But if you have a regression test for this, you can catch when things like that happen. And the last one is smoke tests. Smoke tests are usually done around deployment time. They're just testing a few key features of the application just to make sure everything is running properly. So, can I hit the web page? Can I log in? Can I view my profile? Can I search for something? Cool, done, good. They're kind of like limited end-to-end tests. And I totally forgot to go to the next slide on that. I apologize. Any questions? Oh, it's also incomplete. What the hell? Where did my slide go? What the hell? It disappeared. Oh no, it moved. Okay, that's super weird. All right. Yeah, there's smoke tests are missing from this, but whatever. Any questions about the different types of tests?
No.
Cool. All right. Now we'll talk about Jest a little bit, and then we'll get you guys writing some code, so you can stop listening to me drone on about things. So what is Jest? Jest is a test framework for JavaScript. There are actually many frameworks. Jest is just one of them. Jest is created and maintained by Facebook. Actually, wait, is that true? Maybe I'm getting confused with React. And Jest actually incorporates other testing frameworks into itself. Yeah, I think it's made by Facebook. Yes, it's made by Facebook. So Jest has become very popular because it has a good sponsor. Obviously, it's a good framework, and it actually incorporates other frameworks into it. And it can be used for front end or back end. It's very flexible. It allows you to organize tests in many different ways. It allows all sorts of branching and nesting and all these kinds of things. So if you have a really complicated application, your test structure can match your application structure. It allows you to mock code. For example, if your test needs to call out to an external system, you can mock the calls to that external system for unit testing, like we discussed previously. And it provides code coverage information, so you can see how much of your application is well tested. Should be no surprises there. Any questions?
Nope, good to go.
Cool. All right, so I should probably, there we go. So let us actually write some code. So if you could open up your IDE of choice, be it Visual Studio Code or WebStorm or Atom, Sublime, whatever you use, we can do this interactively. This is a workshop. We will be writing tests and such ourselves. So if you haven't already, create a new folder and run npm init. We're going to create a new project to run our tests. And when you define your package.json, your test script just needs to be Jest. Okay, so basically I'm going to leave this on the screen and then wait maybe 2 or 3 minutes for you guys to type all this out on your side. And if you could do me a favor and just in Google Meet, raise your hand when you are ready. And I will do this on my computer as well. So npm init, go through the stuff. Test command is Jest. Install save.jest. All right, new folder. I'm going to use the folder style instead of the file name style, but you guys are free to do whichever you prefer. And create a folder basic.js. And again, don't forget to raise your hand when you are finished. And if you guys have trouble, feel free to tell me. And just to be super clear, for once you reach this point, you only choose one of these. Don't do both of these, just one. Folder or file names. Can I draw? And if you guys are having any trouble, please ask.
I have the basic JS in the end,
Okay.
but I don't know. The second one, set your test script in package.json to just what it
Yes.
means.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you for asking. So in your package.json, actually, let me make
Yeah.
this a little bigger. It may be difficult for you to see. Ooh, wow. Okay. Should look like this.
Ah, okay.
Good question. Thank you for asking. Are you still working on it?
I'm done.
Okay, cool. Let me know when you're finished, Kelly.
Finished.
Oh, okay, great. Cool. Then we'll move on. So now that you have that set up, open your terminal, whether you're using Windows or Mac or whatever, and go ahead and do an npm run test. And it should look like what I have in the presentation here. You should encounter an error that is expected, but we want the error to look like this. You should specifically see the message, your test suite must contain at least one test. So please raise your hand if you see that. Cool. I like how you do
I don't
it.
have it. I don't have it.
You don't have it?
In my terminal, it say lifecycle script included in testing. Test just.
Oh, interesting. Can you copy and paste it in the chat?
Mm,
You need to run npm run test.
test.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And do you see this kind of output?
Oh, I got it.
Excellent. Okay, great. So if you see this, that means that you have Jest set up properly. So congratulations, you set up Jest and you are ready to start writing tests. Basically, to explain what we did, Jest by default, if I go back here, whoa, oh, we have another, what? There we go. Hi, Bupathi. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. There we go. Welcome. You know what? I'm actually going to share this presentation with you guys so that you can catch up. Where's chat? Okay, the presentation is in the chat so you can catch up, Bupathi. Please tell me if I'm saying your name incorrectly.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. And to summarize what we've done, we created a project. We installed Jest. Let me just run through it here with npm install save dev jest, and we created a folder. That is all on slide number 8. If you look at the slideshow that I linked in the chat. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
So getting access to net, do you want to give access?
Oh, I thought I gave access. Sorry, one moment. Share. Ah, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, it appears to be the same link. I changed the permissions. Can you try refreshing?
Yeah, I'm able to see it now.
Okay, now you can see it? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, please catch up. Again, starting on slide 8 is where you want to start catching up with us. We're only on slide 9, so you don't have too much. All right, so moving forward, now that you guys have Jest installed and are able to run it properly, let's go ahead and start writing our first test. So in the file that you created, in your basic.js file, right, you should have basically a blank file like this. We're going to write a describe block. Jest has this special function called describe, and it is simply a way to group tests. Technically, describe is optional, but I do recommend it because keeping organized helps you go faster. And when you're searching through code, having things grouped together just makes it much, much easier. So Jest is, again, describe is just a way in Jest that you can group functions. The describe function takes in 2 parameters. The first one is a string describing what the group of tests are, and the second is a callback where you write your tests. Any questions about this?
No.
Not yet.
Cool. So go ahead and write that out. And that's pretty short, so I'm gonna, actually no, because you guys need to be able to see this. Please raise your hand when you have this written out. Raise your hand in Google Meet, because I get a sound, and I'm counting the sounds. Cool, 1, 2, great, thank you. And I can lower your hands, I think. Lower all, nice. I said lower. Stop it. Okay. Dude, all right. Okay, good. So you have a describe block, and now when we're writing tests, Jest actually gives you multiple options of how to write your tests. We are going to use the behavioral style. That is not the only way. That's just the way I'm going to show to you guys. If you want to check out the other ways, you can just look at the Jest documentation. But it's all functionally the same. It's just how it reads in code. So Jest provides an it function for writing your tests. And the reason it's called it is because Jest wants to sound like you're reading English. So if you have a test that says, or let's say you have a describe block that says describe car tests, it, and then the test name is should open a door, right? The car should open a door. It reads like you would read English, and it describes the behavior of the application. And that's why I prefer this because I'm an English speaker. Maybe people whose native language is not English may not prefer this, but consider it practice, I guess. So to use this, it's very similar to a describe block. You call the function. Its first parameter is the name of the test, and the second parameter is a callback function where you will have your test logic. For now, we're just going to have an empty callback function. Okay? So please add this inside your describe block callback and raise your hand when you're ready. And I think at this point we should also wait for Bhupathi because hopefully this is enough time for him to have caught up. So please, all three of you, raise your hand when you have finished. Good. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Ryan. And you can leave your hands raised. I'll lower them at the end. And Bhupathi, do you have any trouble catching up, or are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay, but I'm just thinking whether we are running with the project now in local.
Yes, we are. Sorry, I guess I was not clear earlier. So if you go back to slide 8, you should create a project folder and run npm init just like any standard JavaScript project. And then in your package.json, I'll review this just very quickly. In your package.json, make sure that you have make sure that in your scripts you have a test that just executes the jest command. Let's actually make this smaller. And then following that, you want to create a folder _tests _, and inside that folder create a file called basic.js. And inside that you should, whoa, hello. You should have something that looks like this. And if you do all of that, then you should be caught up. So I guess to make this a little easier for you,
Yeah.
please
Let me quickly set it.
Okay, you're ready?
Yeah, I'm going to set up now. So give me 2 minutes. You can go ahead. I will catch up.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let me clean this up then. Cool. All right. So at this point, if you guys have written this out, you should be able to run npm run test once again. Oh, I did not do that properly. I apologize. If you run this again, you should see the below output. Okay. Does everyone see that? Good. Kelly, you too? I'm not hearing a no, and I'm not hearing any screaming, so I'm going to assume you're okay. And now you'll notice how this reads like English. If you add it before here, it should run a test that reads like good English.
I got it.
Excellent. Good to hear. Thank you. All right. So congratulations on running your first test, guys. All right, so let's move forward because we can get way more complicated than this. We're doing pretty good on time. So we have a test, but it's not very useful. This is not helpful at all. So the way that tests in general work is based on something called assertions. We run some code, and then we assert, or we say, hey, the application state should be like this, right? The application should have done this. It should have given me this data. I assert that this is true, right? You want to make sure that something happened. So these assertions are really just conditions, right? You're checking that some condition is true. If the condition is true, the test passed. If the condition is false, the test did not pass. That's all an assertion is. We're just calling them assertions within the context of a test. All testing frameworks have some concept of assertions because assertions are basically what testing is. So to do a quick, really basic, simple assertion, and I'll explain what exactly this is in a minute, but first I just want to get you writing some code. In your should run a test block, add this code in the function callback. This expect one to be one. And this is just a brief example of how Jest can assert that some value matches some other value. We assert that the value 1 matches the value 1. Again, not super useful, but we're just building step by step. I will do that on my side too. And as usual, please raise your hand when you're done. You should be able to run the test, and it should be successful again. Cool. All right. Bhupathi, are you ready for us to wait for you, or you still need more time? Oh, nice. Okay, great. Then let's move forward. So Jest provides a lot of functions to do these assertions because there's many different types of things that we need to check, that we need to confirm happened. In Jest, specifically, we call them matchers because we need to match some data to some other data to make our assertion. To use a matcher, you call that expect function, which you just wrote, with some value as the input. That is basically the value that the application gave us. Okay, so we expect the value that the application gave us to be something else. Okay, now to be is just one matcher. There are many types of matchers. Okay, this is a list of some of the most basic matchers. And later I'm going to send out this presentation again. I have links to references for all of these, okay? Because there are many, many, many more matchers than these. These are just some of the more useful ones. So to be checks that one object is the same as another object. To equal checks for the value equality of those objects. Then you have many that are self-explanatory. To be null, to be undefined, to be defined. Those are, if you understand JavaScript, you understand what those are. You have to match, which you can use a regular expression to test a string. To contain, to check if a value exists in an array. All these kinds of things. There's a big list. Let's actually pull it up briefly. It's a big list. Now, you're probably not going to use all of these, which is why I only showed these in the presentation. But if you need these, they exist. So you have things like to be greater than, or to be less than, or to match object if you don't need a perfect match. These kinds of things. So these are just examples of various matchers. Any questions about the matchers before we move forward?
No.
Cool. So let's actually make our test more advanced. We're going to use these matchers, but first we needed to get some data to use the matchers against. Okay. So in your project, go ahead and install Axios. If you're not familiar, Where the hell is my... There we go. Axios is a library for making HTTP calls, if you are not familiar. So go ahead and install save Axios to your project. Man, I didn't even add... Okay, you know how the system works now. I like it.
No, I already done.
So fast. All right, and after you've installed Axios, create an index.js file. Make it look like this. There is... I sent links to the presentation. If you don't want to type all this, you can just copy it. This is text that you can highlight. This is not an image. So if you look in the chat, go to the presentation, you can just copy this out. It's slide number 17. Or you can get typing practice. And please raise your hand and leave it raised when you are finished with this, because this is going to take some people more time than others. And I did test this beforehand. This will work. So don't worry about something like that. What was that? Yep, perfect. Thank you, Rupati. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, Bhupati.
Cool, thank you. If I ever mess it up, please tell me. Okay, so can I force you to raise your hand so I can track it? I cannot. Okay. Thank you. All right, Kelly, are you finished? I saw you pop your hand up, but I wasn't sure if it was
Yeah.
a mistake or not. Okay, cool. Excellent. So, and I saw you raise yours too, Brian. Cool. So moving forward, now update your basic.js to look like this. I'm going to describe what's happening here. Basically, we are creating another test called it should get a to-do. And using that function from our index file that we just created, we call that getToDo method. And then we assert that the result is this object. If it matches, the test passes. If it does not match, the test will fail. So go ahead and add that to your... Crap, I can't... There we go. Go ahead and add that to your test file. And again, please raise your hand and leave it raised when you are finished, so it's easier for me to track. Meanwhile, I will get typing practice. Oh. Hey. Ah. I forgot to import.
Huh?
Nothing, just talking to myself, sorry. Cool, thank you. I just saw your question. I'm not entirely sure. Let me check. I don't think so. I think we have to be and equals. I think jest is based on Mocha. I'm not 100% sure. I'm checking it now. Are you guys finished?
Yes.
Give me a second.
No problem. If you guys could, when you raise your hand, please leave it up so that I can tell.
아, 아니야.
If you have troubles, please ask. And Bapati, to answer your question, I'm reading up on Chai right now because I don't know Chai, so I'm learning so I can answer your question properly.
Is it right to put index.js in the SRC folder?
If you're using an SRC folder, yes. It just should not be in the test folder. It can just be anywhere else.
But it said index is not defined.
Okay, can you okay. Did you do your import at the top? Const index equals require index. If you look at the presentation, the top line here. Yep, I made the same mistake. Okay, so Bupati, to answer your question, if I understand correctly, Chai's equal is a strict equality match. Jest has a to strict equal, which I believe would be the same. Actually, hold up. Wait, nope. That's wrong. I apologize. One moment. Okay, I think the jest equivalent would be 2 equal. I'm pulling up the docs on it now. Yes, here we go. That is correct. Yeah, so equal in chai is the same as 2 equal in jest. They both use the strict equality operator, the triple equals operator. In terms of equals, like equal singular, I'm not seeing it in the chai documentation. I only see equal. However, I could be blind. Oh. Ah, okay. Equals appears to be an alias for equal. So yeah. All right, you're good, Kelly?
Yeah.
Cool. And Bupati, you're finished too?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So now, whoa, did I not? Okay. Well, now you guys should be able to run your test. So you should be able to do npm run test. And you should see all green, all passed.
Mine is failing.
Okay, so now things are a little complicated because you have to check your test and you have to check your application code.
Yes.
So, some things to look out for. In your test, make sure that you did not forget to import, because both Kelly and I made that same mistake. And don't forget
It's
to add your
pointing
async.
to. Yep, I add. It's pointing to 2 equal
Yes, 2 equal.
as an error. I don't know.
Do you want to copy and paste the error so we can see it and help you debug?
Okay, okay.
I think we both got that same emergency message notification. Okay, so what's below that? There should be more information to describe the error.
Nothing more. At object.anonymous.
There should be something below that. For example,
Here, this is the.
maybe scroll
This is
down.
the last line.
No, there definitely should be more. So, showing an example.
Okay, this is full. I'm sending.
So if I introduce a test bug here, for example, if I make this complete instead of completed, and then I run my test. I'm sorry, it was above it, not below it. My mistake. Okay, so yes. So you need to add an await before you're again to do call.
My fool.
That always I do the same thing. Yep.
Shit.
Yep, it sucks. I think we all know that pain.
Yeah.
And please confirm the test works, and then we'll move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yep, worked.
Excellent. All right, good job, everyone. So this is an example of an integration test, actually, because we tested some code that reaches out to an external system. So that would be considered an integration test. You can see how if we had hundreds of these tests, and each of them are calling out to some third-party API, you can see how that would get slow. So if we want to do a unit test where we're not using a third-party system or an external system, not necessarily third-party, we need something called mocks. and Jest provides a mocking system built into it. Like I said, what we wrote is basically an integration test because it is talking to an external system. But for unit tests, we don't want to call out to an external API. We want to give it some fake data and just make sure that the logic is correct. So to do this, we can mock functions within our code to prevent our code from actually calling out to external systems. If that doesn't make sense now, maybe it'll make more sense when we actually write the code. So let's go on ahead. Yes. So to do mocks, Jest has a special method called mock. And you can give it the name of a module, and Jest will replace that module with some code that does nothing. And technically, it replaces it with a Jest mock object, which is its own bit of confusion, but for this level of things, you don't need to worry about it. It just creates a mock object, and you don't need to worry about anything. Because in a unit test, we don't actually want to call out to the API. We just want to test the logic. So what we can do is instead of actually using the Axios module to call
Client.
out to our placeholder API, we can just mock Axios. And then when we call Axios in our code, it won't actually call Axios. So go ahead and in your code, in your test script, in your test code, go ahead and just after your import, do a jest.mock Axios, just like this. Okay. So go ahead and add that. All right, so that's just the first step. Now, if you run your test now, what will happen is, I think you'll just get nothing. Yeah, your test will fail because Axios will spit out an undefined value. Okay, that's expected. So by mocking Axios, by adding that line we just added, Axios, when we call axios.get in our index.js code, it will not actually run the Axios logic. It'll instead use a jest mock object. Now, the nice thing about jest mock objects is they allow us to change their implementation and return values. So instead of Axios actually calling out, making an HTTP request to the placeholder API, we can just tell it to return something else, and it won't call out to the API. So to do this, we can add a mock return value. So inside your should get a to-do test, add this at the beginning of the test block. So what we're saying is on our Axios mock object, oh, and you will have to import Axios. I apologize, I left that out here. So I'm actually going to share, just going to write this out real quick and share it with you guys. The hell? Come on, tabs. Okay, so your data, or your test file, in the end, should look like this. You need to add this part here, and whoops, this part here, and these parts here. And please raise your hand when your code looks like this. And I believe this is all we need. So if you run your test, really? Nope. What is missing?
We should also change the result to message
Oh,
success.
correct. Yes, thank you. So once you have that written out, I'm just going to go ahead. Oh, yeah, here you go. This is what the final file should look like. So let's just leave that up there. Because once we've changed the mock return value, once we have changed the return value for get, our test needs to match it. Oh, I actually created a new test, but whatever, it's fine. The important part is that you see how it works. Let me do that way for consistency. Mocks.js. So go ahead and raise your hand when you have this written out and when you have the test running properly. Cool, thank you. Please leave your hand up. Cool, thank you. And just one left. Take your time because we are actually a little bit ahead of schedule. Cool. Okay, Kelly. So this error, this is because we changed the output of the Axios call, so we should also change the output of our expectation. So this bottom part needs to change.
Expect result?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I actually made this in a new test. So you can do that if you want, or you can replace the existing version. It's your choice. The final code that I will upload to GitHub will have both. So go ahead and fix that up, run your test, and then let me know if it works. All right, cool. Do we need to put inside data on mocking? I'm sorry, what do you mean by inside data?
Yeah, when we are returning the response, right, we are putting data inside it, we are putting a message.
Correct. We are giving it fake data.
Oh.
Yes.
I think this is because access, right? Access
Yes,
structure.
because in our index.js we return result.data.
Oh, fine.
Yes, because Axios, and this is what Brian was trying to say, Axios stores the response body of the request in a property called data.
Yeah, good.
Cool. Good question, though. And thank you for jumping in there, Brian. All right, we good to move forward?
Yes.
Cool. Kelly, your test runs?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So good job, everyone. You've written your first actual unit test. Excellently done. Now, when we do integration tests, when we do more real integration tests, for example, let's say we're using a database, we may need to prepare some data and then clean it up after the test, right? To keep the environment clean. And instead of, let's say we have many tests that need to do this setup and teardown, and we need to do it for each test. We don't want to have to copy and paste the code a whole bunch of times, or copy and paste a function call a bunch of times. Jest provides these helper functions for setup and teardown. You can use before all to run some code once before all the tests start, or before each to run it before each test as they run, and then after the same. Now, you can define these functions at the module scope, so you can define them at kind of the root module scope here, or you can define them within a describe block here. Or if you have another describe block like this, right? You can define it here, you can define it here, or you can define it here. You can do all different levels for your before and after for your setup and teardown code. Oh, crap. Okay. And you can combine them. This is useful when you have complicated integration testing, because maybe for some tests you need to, let's actually say you're testing an API. And your API has CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete, right? For your read, update, and delete, you need some fake data. You need some mock data. So you would put those three in a describe block, and then you may have before each create the mock data. And then you also have your create function, right? So you might put that inside another actually, you know what? It'd probably make more sense if I just kind of type this out. So let's say describe integration test, right? And you don't have to type this, I'm just demonstrating something. And then we have describe needs existing. Since we're doing to-dos, let's call it a to-do, right? And then it should read. And then we have some test. It should update. And then we have some test, right? It should delete. And then, let's actually get rid of these. There we go. And then here we could have something like before each create fake test data, right? And then before each of these methods, we could create our fake test data. And then in this scope, we could have something like it should create. Holy crap, I cannot type. Okay. And then here we can do after each delete fake test data. So in this kind of structure, we're minimizing our code while still making it pretty readable. Basically, for the create operation, we create some data, and then this after each will delete that data after this test runs. And then because this describe is inside this describe, and this describe has an after each, this will also apply to these tests. So for these tests, we create the fake test data, and then we delete the test data after each test. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Mm.
Cool. So that's basically the value of. Actually, I'll just kind of leave this here for now. I'll clean it up later. Just comment this out for now. So let's go ahead and use this. We're only doing a unit test, but let's go ahead and use this before all, just as kind of an example. So if we go back to our unit test where we mock Axios, inside your describe block, but before your test itself, go ahead and add this before all. And move your Axios mocking into that block. So it should look... and the functionality will be the same, basically. How are we doing on time? Doing good. So I believe... Nope. So once you've done that, you should be able to run your test, and you should have the same output. There should be no functional change. Has everyone got that? I'm going to go ahead and move forward because this is part of a more complete part. Okay. So currently, adding our mock to that will set the mock for the entire file. Right. So if we did mock implementation without the once part, it would mock it for the whole file because we never undid it. So usually when you do a mock, you also want to use an after all to undo the mocking that we did. So we can do a axios.get mock reset, and that will set the mock back to its original state. So go ahead and add that in to your code as well. I think I have, no, I don't. Crap. Should look like this. Let me just verify this runs. Yep, that looks good. Let me put this up here so you guys can see. Your code should look something like this. Please raise your hand when you are ready. I know those sounds very well. What? All right. Please raise your hand when you've got it working. As always, if you have trouble, please tell me and I can help. Kelly, Bhupathi, you guys having any trouble or are you finished? Okay.
I have some trouble.
Can you share what error you're hitting or what problem you have? Just copy and paste your error in chat.
I was still on the basic.js. I gotta make new mock.js.
You don't necessarily have to. You can just make the changes in basic.js. It's your choice. You can do it either way. Do that 좋아요. Oh, okay. What do we got here?
아니구나. 아닌가?
Oh. Ah. Oh. You are missing an async.
Thank you.
Yep. I am missing a semicolon. I'm missing a few semicolons. Shame. Shame, shame. Does it work now, Chloe?
Yeah, it's working.
Excellent. All right. Any questions so far?
No.
Cool. All right. So that covers kind of the basics of Jest itself. And now back to kind of some of the theory stuff of just how we should be writing tests. So first, unit tests are your friend. Doing mocks, testing the logic, is just generally a really good idea. Unit tests are usually your first line of defense against bugs. And you want to run your unit tests frequently. If you've written your unit tests properly, they should run very fast, less than 5 seconds. So running them should be painless. And you want to run your unit tests very frequently to make sure that the changes and updates you're making aren't breaking the system. And again, unit tests should only run the function being tested. You can use mocks, and Jest has another thing called spies, which we're not covering today, to prevent your code from calling other functions or from calling other systems. The reason for this isolation is because if your tests start failing and you have functions that are calling other functions that are calling other functions that are calling other functions, you have this crazy tree of function calls, and you're not mocking anything, it makes finding problems much more difficult. So mocking secondary functions to the function you're testing will help you find problems much, much, much faster. I strongly recommend it. And also, when you're doing unit tests, don't forget to reset your mocks. Because then your tests, if you don't reset your mocks, your tests will fail and then you start looking at your application code, and then you realize, oh crap, my test was wrong. And that's a bad feeling. So always, 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 always clean up your mocks when you're finished. And also use describe blocks to help manage your mocks, kind of like this CRUD example we have down here. By using these describe blocks, we kind of manage our mocking more easily. And then when it comes to integration tests, you don't need to run them all the time when you're testing locally. You should run them either before you commit, like have a pre-commit hook to run your integration test, or at absolute minimum, have your build system, your CI/CD system, do an integration test before deploying or before merging. Integration tests tend to take a longer time because communicating with external services takes more time, so you don't want to be running it very often. But they are a better test of if the application is working properly. As mentioned previously, always create data for your tests, always create fake data, and don't forget to clean it up afterwards. Again, like we just mentioned, you can use describe blocks before all, after each, after all to manage your test data. Also, this is a kind of tip that I'm trying to get people to use at my company now. When you're creating fake data, test data, many times you're not the only person running tests. So if you're always generating data with hard-coded names, you're going to end up having issues. You'll end up running into duplication errors or receiving more records than you expect when you're making calls. A way around this is use either a timestamp or some random number generation or both in your fake data to prevent your testing from causing trouble with someone else's testing, or conversely, their testing causing trouble with your testing. And if you are comfortable with Docker, if you know Docker, use Docker to do your integration testing. It just makes things way easier. Bonus points if your production environment is using Docker, because then it's a like production environment. If you don't really know Docker, you're not comfortable with Docker yet, our meetup is actually going to do some Docker classes in the near future, so keep an eye out for that. And last big thing about writing good tests that at my previous company I had to keep yelling at my team about. Do not rely on your tests to make mock data for other tests, because you end up getting the problem of, oh, my test that creates data does not create data properly. And then all of the tests that rely on that data are then broken, and I don't know why. When I say it like that, it's very obvious what the problem is. But when you see all the tests failing except the create, or maybe the delete and the read failing, but not the create and update, you're like, what the hell is going on? So always, always, always have your tests create mock data and not rely, or have setup and tear down for your mock data rather than relying on, oh, this test runs after this other test, so the data should be there. Don't do that. So that's kind of my soapbox there. Oh, sorry, a couple more. If you're in a really, really, really tight schedule, you're really, really, really busy, at minimum, do happy path testing. Basically, if you have a function, forget mocking, just do integration test, whatever. If you give it the correct input, you get the correct output for a perfect use case. At the minimum, have that, because that can help prevent the most critical and the most basic problems. But if you do have more time, make more robust tests. More robust tests are things like give your function a data type that it doesn't expect, or if your data type expects a number, give it or if your function expects a number, for example, give it a really big number, or give it a negative number, or give it an irrational number, or if it takes in a string, generate some really giant string or something like that. Because in the real world, you will encounter fake data. And making sure that your application identifies bad data and throws a helpful error so you can figure out if it really is an issue or not. Having tests to check all that will save you a ton of time. Yeah, so basically give bad data, test all your error paths, make sure that's all good. Questions about these things? Giving you guys a minute to think of questions. Cool. And last but not least, code coverage. Code coverage is basically a way to, it's not a perfect measure, but it can imply the quality of your software. Because you could have 100% coverage and have crap tests, but if you only have 20% coverage, yeah, there's a high chance that your code is not of very high quality. So having code coverage can at least help you track that metric. Again, it's not perfect, but it's one of many metrics you can use to check your code quality. Code coverage is usually expressed as a percentage. It is often it can be a percentage of functions or percentage of the number of lines of code. Usually, testing frameworks will provide you counts of both. And it's a really good way to check if all your different error handling and logic branching paths are covered. You can get a coverage report from Jest just by adding the -- coverage flag after the Jest command. So usually I recommend doing something like this in your package.json. So let's actually, you don't necessarily have to do this on your side real quick, but just to demonstrate, I'll put it over here. Let me uncomment this again. So if I in my package.json, I have this test script. If I add another one like test coverage and then do just coverage, and then down here, if we do something like npm run test cov, now I get a nice little code coverage report that tells me how much of my code is executed when I run a test. And that's really helpful. The reason it's not perfect is because these two lines right here are not being tested. We have not tested a case where Axios provides an error. So that would be a good example for another unit test where I mock Axios and have it throw an error. And then I test to see that the function handles the error properly. That's actually a great example for a more thorough test. But for purposes of time, we did not do that today. Additionally, Jest does have the ability to output to other test coverage things. So if you do jest -- help, you can see something like, where is it? Coverage reporters, things like this. I'm honestly not super familiar with external code coverage tools. Usually I just use Jest's code coverage tool because I like it and it works. But you can have all these different options. You can look at the Jest documentation for that. Any questions about code coverage? Cool. Oh yeah, here's a screenshot of what I just showed you, but that's the general idea. And that's it. Today we covered why we do testing, the different kinds of tests, what the hell is Jest, setting it up, writing a basic test, basically an integration test, doing some mocking so we could write up a unit test, and then discussing setup teardown, good code or good test practices, and code coverage. Does anyone have any questions about what we covered today or about things we didn't cover today? Please ask.
Did Did we finish all that now?
Yeah, we just did all that, man. We go fast.
Shocked.
I mean, you guys picked up on it pretty quick. There's still another 20 minutes left of the time, so you guys went much fast. You guys were able to keep up with things much better than I anticipated, because usually there's all sorts of problems with workshops. So. Yeah, questions.
Now we have basic JS and mock JS.
Yep.
When I npm run test, all the files are tested.
Yes. So I can demonstrate if we look back up here. By default, Jest has two checks that it does. One is if there is a folder that's __ tests __, it will run any files in that folder.
Mm.
Okay,
If,
so that.
If I want to separately run.
Yeah, if you do subfolders, no problem.
Yeah.
If you want to separate your integration tests from your unit tests, for example, Jest has. Let me get up here real quick. Jest has the ability to specify a test path. So, for example, I could do something like test unit, and then, holy crap, just tests unit **.js.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if I wanted to do integration tests, I could do something like integration. Excellent question, Kelly. I should have included that in the lesson, and thank you. I will improve it for next time. Excellent question. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. Other questions?
Right?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, I have a basic question, so to understand much more.
Okay.
So the unit testing versus the integration testing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yet I just want to understand, in the unit testing, we are just testing the particular functionality of the either file or a component, right? So how can I write the integration testing?
Right. So basically, if we look at this basic.js, this is, if we look at this one here, this would be considered an integration test because because get to do actually calls out to a real external system. So technically that would be considered an integration test. Our unit test, this is more like our unit test because we are mocking the external calls and we're only testing the logic of the code we wrote. We're not testing whether the data at the placeholder API is correct, right? We're mocking that out because we don't care what that is. We just want to test our logic. So that makes this a unit test. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
or?
fine. So the React kind of, still I have one small clarification. So in the React, we are having 2-3 components. In the landing page, we are running 2-3 components. So basically what I'm writing is I'm writing the test cases for individually for component only. But I'm not writing any integration test there. So and also in our CI/CD pipeline, no external calls will go there. So how can I achieve integration testing there?
How can you add integration testing? That's your question?
Yeah.
Okay. In those cases, you said React, so it's front end, correct? Or is this server-side rendering?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's front end only. The
Okay.
client side and only.
So in that case, it depends on how your team is organized and what your skill set is, there's a couple of ways you could go about it. If you're comfortable with database systems, you could do a before all or before each, connect to the database and insert some data, run your test, and then delete that data. Similar to what we described down here, similar to these calls down here. Otherwise, if you're not comfortable or not able to connect to the database, you could basically call the create API. I'm assuming that you're a front end calling some API backend. You could, in your before, after, and all that, you could call the target API, right? Because the target API is just some external system, whether it's a database, another API, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? That is where your integration is. That is where your data is. So in those cases, that's where you use your setup and teardown, your before each, before all, after all, to work with that external data provider or external system and set up your data and then clean it up afterwards. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, got it.
Cool.
Yeah, fine. So, Brian, do you have any plan to take this just with any of the framework, or just only just kind of?
I'm sorry, there's a bit of echo, so I didn't quite understand you. Can you say that again?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, do you have any plan to take any further session with the just like with React or Angular?
Not currently, but if you are interested in that, we could look into it. Most of Korea uses React, so I don't know if there would be enough interest to do other frameworks, but we certainly could. Or did I misunderstand your question?
Yeah, you are right.
Okay.
So I'm just because we are currently working with the React only. So I just want to explore this just how can I implement in the just React project.
Ah, okay. Got you. In those cases, where is my... did I close it? Of course I closed it. Come on. So I'm a backend engineer, so my knowledge of React is not perfect. However, I'm actually learning React. So using this kind of project as an example, let's say I have this tournament bracket React component. What I can do is I can basically take this React component, mock out this load data function, right? Just has something called a spy. So when you do a mock, you're mocking the entire module, right? And if you want to mock one part of a module that you're testing, that doesn't work. So Jest has a system called spies, where you can it basically it wraps some object or some function or whatever. It wraps it with a Jest object, and then it allows you to take one function out of it and temporarily mock it, while leaving the other functions untouched. So in this way, what I could do is I could create my tournament bracket component, spy on it, or spy on this load data function within it, mock this function, and then I could basically just execute use effect, or rather, I could send an event to the component, and then make sure that use effect does whatever it's supposed to do. If I'm doing a unit test, if I'm not doing a unit test, I can just basically create the component and make sure that load data triggers and all these kinds of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right.
Cool. Oh, I was a little worried about that because I don't actually know React very well yet. But I'm learning, so it works. I missed a semicolon. Other questions? Yeah, what's up?
What about TypeScript? Do we need to write in TSX tests? I mean, or does it matter?
It should be fine. Um, the I know that Jest does support TypeScript. I know that. At some point, I had a project that had Jest using TypeScript. I don't know where it is though. I would need some time to find it as an example, but it's definitely possible.
Are you testing your own project now, React?
Well, the project. Oh, this one that I'm working on now, not yet. I don't even have anything working yet, and I'm not doing test-driven development. So,
Uh,
on some other project, I was doing TypeScript-based testing. Actually, you know what? Hold up. Maybe it's this one. Hold up. Maybe it's this one. Oh, 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 look at this. Unit tests, integration. Oh, baby. Okay, I forgot I had this. Of course, this is backend, not front end. But yeah, this is all TypeScript, except I have some kind of bug. That's cool. So yeah, TypeScript is fine.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Cool.
And
Other questions?
you don't know about Redux Saga, right?
I have not gotten anywhere near Redux yet. I'm sorry.
I,
All right, other questions? I should probably close that project.
Yeah, Brent. I have one question regarding marking.
Yeah.
So what I heard that in the basically in the we cannot mark specifically based on the URLs. So for example, the same URL in the particular parameters changed, we want to test the 2-3 scenarios.
Okay.
So so is that possible with the gist?
Oh, absolutely. So, unfortunately, your test code might get a little more complicated, but it's absolutely possible. So what you could do, I'll just throw together a little example for you. You could do something like axios.get.mock implementation. All right. Whereas mock return value just provides your return value, mock implementation allows you to define a full function. And there's also a mock implementation once if you only want it to execute one time. But it sounds like what you need is something a little bit more complicated. So you can do mock implementation. And this takes in some function definition. You can define the input. So let's say the input is URL. And then you can do something like if, oh God, it's actually been a really long time since I wrote JavaScript. Oh my God. URL.contains. I don't think that's I don't think that's an actual function because I haven't written JavaScript in a while, but contains something, right? Or actually better yet, like if you're testing for dogs endpoint dot matches or whatever, compile dot matches. I don't know. It's been a long time since I wrote JavaScript, but you could do something like this.
you mean includes or
Includes. There we go. No, because it's a string. Does that work? I don't know.
mm,
Regardless, you get the idea of what I'm trying to say.
yeah.
So you could do something like this, and then return some fake data, right? And then, or actually, you'd probably want to do like a switch case, but whatever. You can do else if, right? And in this way, you can have a more complicated mock.
Yeah, got it. And one more thing about what about the parameters? Additional post body we are sending it, right? So can we access that one also?
I mean, if you're using Axios, then you just do something like axios.post, right? Whatever the function name is, you just mock that function. Or if you're doing something like, I don't know what framework you're working, I don't know what your system looks like. If you do something like this, where you have like method and then URL as inputs, oops, hold up. You could just do something like if method equals post whatever, right? It's the same thing. Oh, except I missed something. Mock implementation is what we need. There we go.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, bye.
Yeah. Any other questions? These are good ones. I like this. Ah, crap. Kelly, is your hand up because you have a question, or was it up from earlier?
No, I forgot Laura hands it.
Okay, no worries. Any other questions?
I have a question,
Yes.
Yeah,
but it's not
basically we are
about
grouping it.
testing.
Yeah, got it.
Sure, go ahead, and then I'll
Right.
do Bhupati. What's up, Ryan?
No, it's just kind of general. I mean, you're working in a company.
Yes.
How about its working hours or I mean, I haven't graduated yet, but I wanna kind of take a job and drop out of college. This kind of thing.
So if you do that, it's going to be harder in Korea because Koreans care a lot about you having a degree. In places
Ah,
like the US, they care less. But
y- uh,
I work 8 hours a day, pretty consistently. Some nights I'll stay late if I happen to have a deadline, but usually I work about 8 or 9 hours a day.
hmm. Except for that, you just busy with your projects or not companies.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I have a kind of meeting or say a phone interview on Zoom yesterday,
Yep.
and I tell the truth that I wanna drop out,
Yeah.
and he and he liked it. Korean.
So just be careful with that
No,
because
yeah.
go ahead.
I tell them I'm a self learner, so he just accepted.
Gotcha. So if you are able to stay at that company for 2 or more years, sounds like a great idea. But I would say that if you're not able to stay at that company for 2 years or more, you will have trouble getting into another company.
Because of experience and
Correct.
degree.
Correct. So it basically comes down to a risk assessment. If
Yeah.
you are comfortable that you can, if you are confident that you can stay with the company for 2 or more years, maybe a good idea. If not, that is a suicide pill in Korea. So it's your choice how comfortable you are with the risk.
Yeah.
Personally, I would stick out with the degree, unless I had known the person for a long time or knew someone else that worked at the company that I trusted very much. Because I
No, I
worked.
haven't.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I joined a company that I thought I was going to be at for a while, and at first it was great, and then it went terrible, and I jumped ship so fast. So things are always unexpected, and they will lie to you during interviews. That just happens. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Sorry, it's not a perfect answer, but yeah. What's up, Bhupati? You had a question too?
Yes, just a general. So I'm joining first time to this meeting. So can I get any background of it or about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So we are CodeSeoul. I started this group 4 years ago when I first arrived in Korea as a branch of another learning group, which we have since separated from. We are a legal nonprofit based in Korea, and we provide free programming and general technology education to anyone who wants to come learn. All of our events are free. We do ask for donations, which I will do at the end of this before everyone leaves, but they are not required. And currently, because we are still a phase 1 nonprofit as registered in Korea, there is no tax deduction for donations yet. So if you are looking for a tax deduction, don't donate yet. Wait a little longer. If you don't care and want to donate anyway, cool, great, go for it. But we, yeah, basically we just do free events to teach people programming and programming related things. That's pretty much it. We have I think over 2,000 people registered by name, but lately due to the pandemic, our attendance has been anywhere from 1 to 8 people. Previous to the pandemic, we would commonly have events of 20 to 50 people. We had a few quite large events, and hopefully after the pandemic we can start growing again. So yeah, does that Oh, and the technology we cover, we're willing to cover pretty much anything, and we always welcome people to come teach something with us. So if there's something if you have some knowledge that you want to share with other people, even if it seems like super beginner people or super beginner knowledge, we have a lot of super beginner people. So it's still worth sharing. Um, so yeah, that pretty much summarizes it. Does that answer your question? Does that give you a good idea of what the organization is about?
Yeah, cool.
Cool. All right. Anything else? Cool.
So
Then,
more when I'm looking for a gist, I know like,
sorry.
yeah, sorry, a final question.
Oh, yeah, go for it. What's your
Yeah,
question?
yeah, just a question. So I just wondered. Yeah. So usually when we are looking at the gist, right, I can see the test suite. So what exactly test suite it mean?
What exactly test suite? I missed the last part because your audio cut out. What was the last part of that sentence? I'm sorry, I did not hear the question properly. What was the last part of it? Hello? I cannot hear you if you're talking. Bupati? Did we lose you? Ah, crap. uh, maybe you can type it if your audio is not working. Oh, crap. Well, all right. All right. In that case, yeah, okay. Um, here are some additional Whoa, okay. Here are some additional resources uh, for reading up on testing with Jest. Hey, welcome back. All right, sorry. So, what was your question again?
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just tried to understand about the test suite. So when I'm looking to the gist, I want to know like what is test suite exactly mean?
Ah, um, so Jest doesn't have. How do I explain this? So in other test frameworks, a test suite is a very kind of specific definition, right? Like usually there's some sort of test suite object. Jest does not have anything like that, but there are two ways that you can kind of approximate a test suite. One is at the file level. You can consider a file a test suite, or you can consider a describe block a test suite. Um, Usually I prefer to organize things by file. So for example, if I have since you're doing front end things, let's say oh, actually, yeah, let's use that example project. Let's say you're doing some front end website for tracking game tournaments or something like that. You'll have things like user profiles, teams, tournament brackets, all these kinds of things. And let's say I wanted to have a test suite for users, like testing everything having to do with users. Then I would just make a file to contain all of my user tests and consider that to be my user test suite. And then with Jest, if you only want to test, if you use that strategy, the file-based strategy, you can use your path pattern to specify, hey, only run this suite of tests. Alternatively, I believe Jest has a way to specify a describe or it text for specifying which tests to run as a test suite, but I do not know what it's called off the top of my head because I always use the project style. But with Jest, you can use files to approximate test suites, and you'll see that in coverage, for example, it groups it by file. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, right.
Cool. All right. Other questions before we call it a day? Do any remain? Going once. Going twice. All right, cool. So there's only this present Jest is actually kind of big, so there's not a whole lot of additional resources here, but here are the additional resources if you want to read up more. And after this, I will post the code and the video online if no one has any objections. If you have an objection, if you don't want a recording of this to be posted online, please tell me. The only things I'm recording are this right screen that you're seeing in the presentation. So anything that appeared on the screen is what will appear in the recording, along with voices. If you are not comfortable with that, please tell me and I will not post it online. But if you're okay with it, I will post it online and I will put the code that we wrote today along with a link to the video in this presentation so you can find it later. Crap, there was something else that I was going to add that wasn't in the presentation and I don't remember it. Oh, and I will share the presentation link one more time in the Meet chat. And I also recommend that if you have more questions or if you just want to join a really cool community, you can join us on our Discord server. It does not require a membership, but I recommend it. It is free. Everything we do is free. Discord has both a web interface and an app interface, whether you're on desktop or mobile. So you can feel free to chat with us there. And with that, thank you for attending today. We really appreciate you coming. You guys attending this keeps those of us teaching lessons here and running groups here motivated to keep doing it, because that's why we do it, to make you guys happy and to help you learn. If you have questions, you can email me directly at this email, because we now have our own domain and Google Workspace. Or you can ask me on Discord. As I mentioned before, we are a registered nonprofit, and here is donation info if you would like. Do be aware, donations to us are not yet eligible for tax deductions. However, I think after June or July, we will be eligible for tax deductible donations. So yeah, beyond that, thank you very much for attending, everyone, and I hope to see you at other events.
Thank you as well. I appreciate that.
Sounds good. Cool. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to end the call. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Jason.
Bye.